Hello, everyone. It's the Data Product Workshop number 3. My name's Stuart Fotheringham. Today we have John Cook talking to us about AI treasure hunting with data products. And I'm going to hand you straight over to John.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stuart. Yes, quite excited about this one today. We've been working quite a lot with some organizations around kind of the value around data products. There's a lot of talk around the sort of architecture and delivery, but today we sort of talk a bit about the process we go through when we actually use them to drive business value, genuine business value. I know there's a lot of talk on LinkedIn and other places around that, and we thought we'd kind of just go do a sort of an overview of kind of how we do that using data products themselves. So, okay, yes, AI treasure hunting with data products today. So, what we'll cover fundamentally is obviously there's a lot of talk of AI is a very hot topic now, especially with GenAI. And what we'll cover is a lot of, first of all, why AI initiatives fail. That's a big problem in the industry, we know. The importance of really sort of starting with use cases and why you're having use cases driving AI projects, not just data, but we'll get into that as well. We'll also talk about a methodology for selecting and prioritizing AI use cases and valuing them, which is really, really important. So we'll go through kind of that whole process with AI, with data products. We'll go through a couple of work examples, and then we'll take questions. So hopefully this will be interesting and something a bit different. Obviously, we're going to be using our people who've seen our original videos. We'll be using a data product pyramid as the kind of core of this. So you'll see some stuff you recognize, but hopefully it'll be interesting. So let's dive in. So why do AI projects fail? Common pitfalls. Yeah, so this is lots been talked about this, especially at the conferences like Gartner, and that's first of all, one of the things we do see a lot is we need to do AI now. We see a lot of organizations going down that road and becoming sort of very technology led. So we got to build on LLM. We've got to do some fine tuning. We've got to play with RAG. We've got to do all this kind of stuff. This obviously is tail wagging the dog. We know this technology really isn't the way forward. You need to start with business led, basically being a business first approach. And if you're business first approach, you need clear business value. Again, we see a lot of what we call vanity projects where AI is being used to kind of play and have fun, which is great for learning, but not really good for driving value. We also see the wrong use cases being used. We see that things are things fail. Things aren't possible. We're going to try and build this wonderful AI tool, but actually we can't do it because we don't have enough of the capability or enough of the data. Or it's the wrong value. Fundamentally, we built this really great thing, but actually doesn't add a lot of value to the business at all. The other thing we see is it's sort of AI being used off to the side as some kind of innovation piece, but then it doesn't really has a massive impact potentially to the business and the business process. And the business go, well, actually, we don't really want to do that because we don't want to change our business process because of the risk and cost, etc., etc. So AI is fundamentally should be used as a change process, and you need the business to be front and center as part of that. Obviously, AI is very driven by data, as we know. There are massive data and integration challenges with organizations. We have long tail impact, which is basically, we do a prototype, we get some test data together, but actually when we try and put it into production, it doesn't work. So yeah, it doesn't. So those sorts of things are really, really tricky. Also, we find, is your organization ready? Do you have your teams there and able to actually do this? Again, we see this a lot when we go, they do innovation houses and then try and push them into the production side of it, that the organization is not ready. So, fundamentally, AI is great, but it's obviously a spectrum of complexity that you need to have a business to be able to do. So we talk about AI-ready businesses, and it's quite interesting. There's lots of talk around getting your data ready, the foundation, AI-ready data. I'm not a big fan of that term. I think I've done enough machine learning projects and AI projects to know actually there's no such thing as perfect data, and sometimes you don't have really good enough data. And what you need to do if you find that, and I'll go into this in a bit more detail later on, is that if you don't have the data, you need to really look at, what do you do to either get the data or to change it or to create it. It's a cost benefit analysis fundamentally. And, fundamentally that's what an AI ready business in my mind is about. It's about, I'm ready to look at the business process first. And then if I don't have the data, then I have options to choose what I do about that, rather than saying we start with the data and we can't do it because we have to wait for the foundation to be ready. So this is about being ready and actually being adaptable. AI initiatives fail, but not projects. So again, AI is about continuous experimentation. It's about trying stuff out. You know, your hypotheses, your models and stuff will fail at points, and that's part of the whole continuous adoption of AI. You know, trying stuff out. You know, experimenting, iterating, and stuff. So, you know, instance failures, we call it. You know, if the model doesn't work, and I've had this before a number of times. It's all part of the learning process. So, that's a very, very important point to get across. So, what do we talk about? Treasure hunting. So, right, this video is about treasure hunting. So let's get into it. So, treasure hunting is really continuously finding and delivering value based on your business environment. So, and it's using AI to do that. But fundamentally, the process is very, very, very simple. You've got a business event comes in. This could be a market event. It could be something else. You know, business process or something. You need to ideate. You basically say, right, what's the ideas that we need to come from that fundamentally? What are the use cases that are particularly good to actually solve that particular problem? We need to value them. We need to prioritize them. We need to capture them and understand them. But this is again the starting point of the process. Once we have a top number of use cases prioritized, then we prototype. You know, we need to experiment. We need to actually try it with real data. And I've done this before, where you've tried it on completely synthetic data and you pushed it over to production. It just hasn't. It's completely failed. So it's got to be done with real data, and even that's the extracts and that kind of stuff. And you got to do demos. You got to do feedback. You got to work with the business around this. So very much like, you know, sort of the UX process but with AI and data and analytics. And that's that whole kind of fast feedback and that kind of fast fail really is really, really important. Obviously, once you prototype, you know, one of the things you need to do is then what we call industrialize. So, you know, turn your AI and data products into production ready, you know, systems. And that includes things like, you know, policies, data quality, all that kind of stuff. But this thing, again, this needs to be quick. You know, you can't just do spend a couple of months doing a prototype and then always going to take 12 months to actually put it into production, which I think is a massive problem in the industry to actually push that over. You know, and obviously once you push it into production, then you operate it. So then, you know, think about AI models. They adopt and they're not fire and forget. You've got to nurture them. You've got to continuously train them. You've got to look at errors, skew, bias, all that sort of stuff. LLMs is obviously massive around that, you know, looking for hallucinations, looking for kind of errors that come out. So you've got to continually nurture them. You've got to measure them, measure the outputs, and then change them fundamentally. And it's a loop. And this is the whole point. This is what the AI ready really means to me. It's basically you're continuously adapting to the environments. You're continuously iterating around. It's not like a one-off thing. So, you know, trying to get out to this kind of project mentality where it's start and stop to actually a continuous, almost like what agile should be, process of actually moving with the business. And in the middle is our data product pyramid. For viewers who've seen this before, this will be familiar ground, but I'll go into that in a second. But this is really the core of the framework that we use to actually run through this process. Okay, so we can't talk about AI treasure hunting without data products. And again, I've covered this quite a lot before. So again, people who are familiar with it will know it. Obviously, people who haven't, you know, be welcome to my view or our view of what a data product is. I know there's a lot of contentious in the industry, but when we do go through this process, we generally talk to business people, and the business language we use is something that resonates with them in terms of the value. So, you know, a data product for us is really an end-to-end analytic component delivering business value. So some examples here would be, you know, what's my historical performance? We call that a metric. How do I understand what's happening? We look at kind of business map, context, graph models, that type of stuff. But we use the language that actually they understand. So we're mapping out your business. We're trying to understand the context of what's happening in your organization. What's my future cash flow? So that would be forecast prediction. That could be regression, or that could be time series or whatever. But it's really, you know, trying to predict the future around a particular business process. Also, you know, avoiding risk. So can I simulate what's going to happen? Can I actually try and work out some optionality around actually what potentially could happen so I can mitigate around it? So we call that a simulation. And that could be anything from nature-based modeling to stochastics, Monte Carlo, or what have you. And then we get to the real meat of it is what do I do next? The decision, the outcome. And that's what we call a decision model. And then obviously, you know, what data do I need and where do I get it? And all of these require data. But then we talk about data, and we talk about a collection of data that comes from a particular data product being a container. And I prefer using the word data container than data product for the data set, because it really resonates with technical people, but also the business people as well. And also, you know, one of the things we need to do is try and map this to business value. Fundamentally, obviously, this is a very famous graph by Gartner. And what we're trying to do is say, actually, as we go, we're trying to go up the value chain. Really, the top value is basically making the decision, the action, the outcome, basically. And we say, look, this is a lot of things at the very top, the prescriptive, how can we make it happen? But in order to get to that point, we need to understand what will happen the predictive way, why did it happen, and what happened as well. So, and that's why we map our data products types to those particular value structures, because it makes it very easy then to describe kind of where the value is coming from in an abstract manner, but for the business people. So now we've talked about data products, and we've talked about AI very much. Now, obviously, I've done quite a lot of AI projects, from classic AI all the way through to large language models and generative AI. So what is really, really important when we're doing this is understand that we've got this thing called the AI toolbox, which is really a set of models, a set of algorithms, a set of approaches for actually different classes of problems. And they are different parts of business problems as well. So what we do is basically we use these, like time series regression, classification, clustering, reinforcement learning, but even also not just AI models like graph models, prescriptive metrics, any kind of analytics model. We understand how we actually map that to a particular class of business problem. And this is really, really important when we're going through to hunting for value, hunting for looking along business process, looking at kind of revenue streams, this type of stuff. Oh, I know that's you want to do a sales forecast. That's a forecasting problem. So we need a predictive model around that. And that's a really, really important aspect of our process to actually understand kind of what the right class of model is. To use for the right class of problem. So the AI toolbox is one of the key kind of tools we use actually to do this. And obviously, it's also understand the importance of constraints, licenses, data. Obviously, LLMs, the hallucinations are the source of the data, kind of what your IP risk, all that kind of stuff is really, really important for each of those. So, when you're using AI, it's not just like, I've downloaded a library or downloaded a model from Hugging Face and used it. It's like I need to understand the whole ramifications of what it means for my organization as well. That's super, super important. Okay, so we talked about data products, and again, what we use is something called the data product pyramid. This is a process, framework that we've developed. We use a number of places where we take those data products, take the business problem, and decompose it into a list of different composable models. Really, fundamentally, it's really the heart of the composable enterprise we talked about quite a lot on other posts. So fundamentally, what we have is the top of the pyramid is the decision, the actual decision I want to make, and it's like, what do I need to do? Then we drill down into kind of what I need to make that decision, what's going to happen. That's a prediction. What's it mean? Why is it happen? That's contextual. Again, we talked about building graph models and stuff like that as well to actually bring that together. And on top of that is basically you need to understand what's happened and then the data that needs to do it. So we have this kind of dependency matrix or dependency hierarchy of components that actually then form this pyramid that actually gives you the final decision, the final outcome in there as well. So really what it is, it's a business change process. It's not just analytics, it's not just tech. It's really what we have is a way of actually changing the business. And that's really important to understand that. And when we talk to business people, they understand that and understand that we're trying to change the business rather than just come up with some tech or data, that type of stuff. So, we have the business change drive at the top. It's basically a big funnel, which is all the things the business potentially want to do. And that could be stuff that's proactive, or that's part of a strategy, or it could be reactive, and we'll go into that a little bit later. Something's happened to their business or their market. We fill the top end of the funnel, we go down, then we do the use case prioritization, selection, and value. So we find the right ones to do. We then what we call business solution framing, which I'll talk a little bit more, which is really about, is it the right problem to solve? Are we solving it in the right way? We then find the valuable ones of those, turn those into the pyramid, fundamentally going through that process, publish that into the infrastructure, and execute the decisions, and then measure. And it's really, really important that when we're actually doing the decision, that we actually build the metrics around how to measure that decision as well. And that's what forms the continuous loop, fundamentally, of iteration. So, like I said, the way we actually drive that through in the process is how we actually get to the actual pyramid itself. Is we start asking the questions like to the business person, what's the key outcome you actually want to make? We don't start with what's the dashboard, what's my KPI, what's my data. It's like, let's take a step back. What's the key decision that you want to make? Oh, that's a decision model. And then you understand, what do I need to know to make that decision? Right, that's typically I need to know what's going to happen. I need to know what's happened. I need to know what it means fundamentally. And you drill down the questions, and each time the question gets asked, typically that results in some kind of model with a big dependency around that. So one feeds into the other. So you get this pyramid of products, but also you get this business journey and the data storytelling piece around it, which I've covered in one of my previous podcasts. Yeah, feel free to have a look at that on the YouTube channel. So this is really important business, and this is the guide to the business through this whole process. And again, it's the same with AI, it's the same with metrics, it's the same with analytics. Generally, we use the same process. Okay, so now we've got the tools, we've got the process. How do we start? Let's get going treasure hunting. So before we actually start, we need to state, and I can't state this enough, we need to start with the use case, not the data. We've seen so many times people say we need to start with the data. We need to have a look at the data, see what try, and magic will suddenly spring out of it. That's not necessarily the way we work, and it's not the way we've seen successful. And there are other people there who have frameworks that do that, but fundamentally, for the way we want to do it and the way we've seen it successful, it started with the use case. And the use case has, we need to have clear business objectives. Is it the right use case to move? Are we have the relevant use case? Can we prototype it? Does it actually solve a business problem? Can we actually have a bunch of people who in the organization who actually help do this? Does it map to the actual business use case that we actually want to do? We need key stakeholder engagement knowledge. If you start with the data, you won't get that. So fundamentally, we need the owners, the stakeholder to actually own and understand it. We need to be able to iterate through it as well, continually based on the business needs. We're always measuring and testing back to the business saying, is this right? Is this the right thing to do? Is this actually giving me the right outcome? And we need to make sure it has real world impact. Does it move the dial in the business as well? So these are super important. This is why we need to start with the use case rather than the data. So one of the other tools we use is one called the opportunity canvas, and this is something that's going to be adapted based on the business canvas. But and the idea is that we start by sitting in the room with the business people and actually then go through and ideate fundamentally. So can we describe the opportunity? Can we describe the outcomes? Can we actually then do an initial valuation on those? We've got this value framework we've based on RICE, which is reach, impact, cost, effort, and we've added a risk in there as well, which is super important. And then what comes out the back of it, effectively, we're defining the top of the pyramid, the decision piece of the pyramid. So, and then we get the top level, top 3 or 4 of those, and then we say, right, we can set the risk. The score is high, which is great. Let's crack on through there. And obviously, and then we go on to the next phase, which is effectively selecting the right use case. And selecting the right use case is really, really important because we've gone through some prioritizations and value around that. But the right use case is, potentially the one that's going to give the greatest impact, the lowest risk, and also the greatest value. That's what we're trying to do. But there's tend to be 3 areas where we look around that. There are business process improvement. That's quite a top one for us. We get a lot of companies coming to us saying, can you actually find out where we can use AI in our operating model? So, but we also look at things like market needs. So can we optimize my sales channel? Or we actually looked at the way you're closing your deals in there isn't great. So we can actually improve that with some analytics, with some AI in there as well. But also looking at identifying new revenue streams, and that's something we're sort of getting into as well. And you think, oh, that's a really great idea here. You could actually sell that and actually build a new business market around that. So again, we're looking at those kind of 3 different areas, particularly kind of how we actually get the use case, and it's it drives basically kind of from there. The process is exactly the same, the data product pyramid process. So if we dive into one, so business process improvement, again, this is something we do a lot. And what we're doing is literally doing a magnifying glass. We sit down with the business teams and actually work along the business process and go, oh, actually, here's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity for automation for saving costs, or there's an opportunity for reducing risks, or there's an opportunity for improving performance or productivity and that type of stuff. That we literally walk along the entire business process and use our AI toolbox and our business knowledge and work with the business in there as well. To actually identify where where some opportunities are for us. Oh, you can use a regression model in here rather than using a spreadsheet to actually do this, and you'll get a much more improvement. Then you've obviously got to evaluate, saying actually, to change that, it might take 12 months to develop that because that's the capability you've got. Saying actually, it's not worth doing that piece. But a lot of the time it is, and the automation is there. And then what we come at the back of it again is the use cases. It's basically the top of the level of decision. So we might be optimizing a call center, for instance, saying actually you can productivity here. The outcome is the decision is a new work schedule for a particular team to actually get a better benefit at it, and we need a decision model around that, and that gives us the top level of the pyramid. We've also been looking at and working with sort of using LLMs to actually help us, assist us on this, which is really, really interesting. So the idea is that you have a large language model, and we've done some work around this where you actually fine tune it with market data, with particular sector data, some really detailed kind of stuff, and then you start asking about competitors. You start asking about the market. You start asking it to do some analysis on the company's data and say, like, let's bring all that together. Give us some target opportunities we can go and investigate, which we may not see or we may not understand, or that type of stuff. And the LLM actually has done quite well, and actually giving us some. Doesn't give us a lot of detail, but it does give us areas that we may not have thought about. So it's definitely an accelerator for this. And we talk about new revenue streams, but it's also talk about optimization, doing some market analysis and comparison as well. So I think this is something that's definitely on the cutting edge, and we'll see a lot more of this, I think, in the future. You can also use GenAI as as actually a revenue stream itself, and this is an interesting piece of research done by Michael Mansard, and Stuart Winter did a nice summary for it. And I saw this today, and I thought I need to include it because it really is what a lot of firms are doing is looking at GenAI in a number of different ways to actually add to their product portfolio, and something obviously some companies are doing as a full end product. Some are using it as kind of value booster, where they're basically looking at augmenting their existing process. Some are looking as an added option for existing plans. So SaaS companies are actually saying, well, we've got a Copilot, or we've got a particular type of Gen AI piece that actually adds value to as a feature. And some have actually gone the full tier. It's like, actually, if you go to the enterprise, or you go to the extended enterprise or the platinum, then you get this extra offer on generative AI. So if you're a product company and that type of stuff, this is definitely a very interesting area to look at. So we've done our ideation. So what's the output of that? So we get a bunch of pyramids which look like this fundamentally. So this is one we did for a supply chain customer. And if you look at the very bottom, we start from the bottom upwards, and we look at there's all the data coming from the various different data sources for this particular organization. And we go up to next, and we've got the information products, which are basically all the metrics that are associated with a particular use case. In this case, it's actually defining a new supply chain route. So again, supply chain kind of geospatial optimization piece. From the metrics, we have basically a demand, a future fleet capacity, and then a route simulator, which is basically indicating the demand and also kind of giving the optimal routes for that particular demand. And then we have a new route decision engine, which then pushes out a new supply chain route for logistics for trucks across geographies, which is kind of interesting. But at least it shows you kind of what's the output is of the ideation piece. Obviously, this is just a design at the moment, so it's not built. So then what we'd need to do is go into the prototype phase. And prototyping is really looking at that pyramid and trying to prove out the value and the feasibility and the risk very, very quickly. And this is really important. This can't be a 12-month, 18-month project fundamentally. What we're trying to do in that is, as I say, prove out the value. We've come up with a hypothesis that if we put some AI in this particular part of the business process, it's going to produce this much value. We need to prove that. And that again doesn't need to be enterprise grade, but it actually needs to prove that actually, oh yes, we can actually achieve that kind of value. We need to test the feasibility. So again, we talked about if the data doesn't exist for that particular model, that particular thing, we then need to be able to pivot, and I'll give you some options around that later on. We need to create a prototype design in front of the business. So fundamentally, this isn't just about creating the data, isn't just about creating the model. It's about creating the UX, the whole package, and this is what we call the data product. So something that's business facing, so the business can look at, can feedback on, get buy-in from, understand that this is actually their tool. It's not something off to the side. It's nothing from data and tech have cooked up. It's something that's part of what they own. It's got real data in it. And again, this could be data dumps, it could be extracts, this type of stuff. It doesn't need to be a live connection to the estate. And also we evaluate the cost, risk, and effort around it. So we come up with these RISE scores. Can we actually validate that? So it may be very, very difficult to actually build it, even in prototype form. So you've got a risk and cost effort assumption around that, or it may not be feasible. Again, the feasibility thing is quite important. And part of this is, again, this is an initiative cycle. It's a very kind of agile, very UX kind of, data science type process, and again, what we do with the pyramids, we start from the bottom. So we select the candidate. So here, it could be the food distribution metric here. And it's really, really important to start at the bottom, because if we can't do the bottom, any of the bottom tier, we potentially can't do the whole pyramid. And it's really, really important to actually understand if we can't do that bottom tier, then we won't, we don't want to continue. We don't want to wait 12 months for that. We don't want to spend millions of pounds to be able to do that. We want to actually test it and fail fast as we go. But what's really important, once you select the product candidate, is also select the success metrics. And these got to be business defined and business validated and business accepted. So, this is really, really important. Obviously, then go through the normal process. You source data, build features, build and test a model, prototype the UX, going around with the business, present and then measure feedback, and you're going round and round. And you're basically crawling up the pyramid as you go, using the different models, different types of things to actually be able to do this. And again, this is super important that you can iterate, because the shape of this pyramid may change. You've got to design what you may think it is. When you come down to the end of it, you actually say, actually, the pyramid looks quite different. It gives you the same outcome, but actually, we thought there was a metric coming from that. Oh, but we've already got that from another system. So that's, we don't need to build that metric, that type of stuff. So we're applying the AI toolbox where, we said actually there might be a regression model, but we've done it at random forest. It's actually a lot easier and a lot more transparent, because the risk on the regression model is too high. So again, the whole point is you're changing your ability to change the pyramid and actually deliver in an agile kind of way, but still get to the outcome. Like I said, framing the model is actually quite really, really important. Fundamentally, I talked a little bit about regression versus something else, random forest. But again, it's right understanding the right class of business problems. So you need the right model to do that. So many times people say, "Oh, we want to use AI to do this." It's like, well, actually, you just need a metric to do that. And also, understanding the outcome as well. So it's like, if someone says, "I want a dashboard," it's like, actually, you need a decision to how to do that. Just take a step back. Don't just come and ask me for a dashboard or a metric. That's what you've done before. What do you actually need to get to the outcome? So understanding the class of business problem you're trying to solve. Understand it's not all about AI. AI is fantastic, and AI covers such a broad spectrum. But again, it comes back to, you can do quite a lot on prescriptive metrics if that's required. If that's going to solve your problem, and it's going to be a lot simpler. And also, when you're doing models, try understanding the constraints. Fundamentally, I did a project a few years ago where it was with financial services, and we couldn't use a deep learning model because the regulation, it was too opaque for them. So we had to go back and use something else. So really understanding kind of what the constraints of the data, the environment, the legal frameworks, any kind of regulatory issues, that kind of stuff, is really, really important to actually come up with the right model, because that will change your approach and it will change the model you use. You might even use ensemble models, or not just one. So yeah, it's really, really important, this piece, that you get the right model. So I've heard a lot, what happens if you can't find the right data? You need the data before you can do any AI. Well, that's true, and it's not true. I mean, my first GenAI project, we had 1,500 documents, so we had very little data actually. So there are options when you don't have enough data. Obviously the nuclear option is right. Well, you can't do the use case, try something else, but make sure you use the value framework and the framework to be able to do it. Or do a cost benefit analysis. It might be easy to say we can go and buy some more data to do that, or we can actually change the business process to actually capture some more data, or take something off an archive log or something like that. So there may be some ways of actually getting the data that actually isn't too onerous, but again, you've got to measure that with the impact of the value on that as well. The other way is, we look at ensemble approaches, which basically means you're using AI for part of it. You might use some stochastic or some classic linear algebra, or even heuristic, a rules engine to actually generate the data, or it might be using an agent-based model or something like that. So it's not all about if it's just AI or not. You've got to look at the end-to-end solution and use the right tool for the job. And there's also other ways of augmenting, creating the data, and a lot of people are using LLMs to actually generate synthetic data. Obviously, you can be aware of biases and stuff like that as well. But there are other frameworks and other ways of generating data to actually do this. So don't stop if you can't get the data. Have a look at other ways of doing that. So we've done our ideation, we've done our prototypes, and what we end up with is basically these prototype data products fundamentally. And I've kind of did a little depiction of here, so basically matched to the data product pyramid. And those prototypes are rough. They're going to be rough. They're going to be rough pipelines. There's going to be some rough data in there. You might have the first incarnation of the model. These aren't enterprise grade at all. You might have some wireframes, some interactive wireframes, and some metrics around that. But you've got your products. You've got your prototypes. So the next bit really is, once you've got the prototypes, we need to industrialize. And this is the bit that's really, really important. So as I said, it's important to not, once you've done the kind of, you proved it out, it's all good, you've got the business all excited, you can't spend 12 months, 18 months getting it into production, because potentially the opportunity might move on, the business will get disheartened. So the industrialization piece is really, really important to be able to get done really quickly. And the way we do it is basically, once the product, you got the prototype, you need to build this thing called data product containers, something we do. We do it quickly and kind of iteratively. And the data product container really is an industrial package, really an enterprise grade package for the data product. And that's obviously got an industrial version of the model, of the test data, of the pipelines, the UX and the UI in there as well. But it's also got all the good stuff around data governance, data management, so security, your monitoring, your policies, all that kind of stuff. And that really then gets packaged up as the way we do it is a microservice, but obviously there are other ways of doing it. And then that gets published onto the product infrastructure, we call the ecosystem. And a data product for us, from a runtime perspective, is as a microservice running in that. And that has a whole life cycle around that as well. But I won't go into that on this session. I'll do this on another session. But obviously, if you want to know more around that, please contact us. So, the industrial running this process is really, really important. But again, the rapid iteration is again even more important. I've seen so many organizations get excited and get bogged down and kind of actually running this whole process. And this really should be days and weeks, not even weeks, not even months, really. And it's really the enabler around this is really having the infrastructure and the workflows and the kind of bringing that all together to be able to do this. And the infrastructure that's required for that is, something obviously we've been working on. And obviously we'll be giving a announcement very soon around this. But fundamentally, you need a way of actually data scientists, business people, to be able to interact through natural language using UX that actually allows those kind of that fast feedback with business people, which is can drive the whole kind of business use case. You need a way of rapidly deploying and models and AI analytics and pipelines and that type of stuff, which is really, really important. Can't wait for 2 months for a model to get trained or to actually go and get the data and this kind of stuff. It also needs to have be able to actually natively support all AI models really, really quickly, and we need to have that kind of on-demand product ecosystem that can be deployed to very, very quickly and operated on. This is something that doesn't really exist. You can't buy this today. You'd have to make it yourself, which costs a lot of money. But that's something obviously we will be giving an announcement about in a later date. Excuse me. Right, so bringing it all to life. So what does this mean? How do we what does this actually look like? So I've put together a very, very simple example, and it is very simple, just to kind of iterate kind of what we're talking about. Fundamentally, and we've done this before. We've got an order logistics optimization problem, or not a business process, should I say? This is really starting with looking at a business process optimization piece. So here we've got a very, very simplistic view of the logistics optimization process. We've got the e-commerce piece where the customer browses and selects the product, customer places orders routed to the warehouse team, orders received by the warehouse team. And currently, the product's found, but it's manually done in the warehouse. And I have seen this before with some organizations where the warehouse process isn't that particularly optimal. And then once the product's found, it's obviously then dispatched to the logistics team. So what we would do was basically run through with a logistics SME from the business, with one of our data product specialists. We'd actually put a big magnifying glass along that. And obviously here, there's a really obvious answer, which is our obvious opportunity, should I say, which is basically to automate this product search across inside the warehouse fundamentally. So what we do, we'd actually measure that and say, actually, what's the actual business impact of this? I mean, actually, there is actually quite a big impact here. It's 1.5 million a year, because a lot of orders get cancelled because they run late. And one of the major reasons they're late or they take a lot of time is because this manual search in the warehouse. So, if someone orders it, they want it in 1 or 2 days. This can take up to a week, and 2 or 3 days could be actually on the order. So an obvious opportunity here to actually build a kind of an optimization in the warehouse to find these products and then just dispatch them really, really quickly. So what we would do is go through our decision framework we talked about. So what's my key outcome? The key outcome is basically an optimization for the product inside the warehouse, so they can be found quickly based on the order type. And we'd run through that, run through the pyramid process, and we come up with another pyramid here. So we've got an inventory finding process, decision model at the back of it, which depends on things like future demand model. There's an inventory placement optimizer, which is a machine learning model, and there's a load of metrics and data sets that actually support that. So historical orders, warehouse resources, so that's people, and also vehicles and that kind of stuff. The inventory, logistics, and a geospatial map of the warehouse to actually be able to do that. So we come up with this pyramid. We then prototype the data products around that. We then build the data product containers and then publish out onto the data product ecosystem. And the idea is that we can do this in a week or two, fundamentally, so they can actually, because every week they progress, they're losing orders, they're losing money fundamentally. So there's a genuine business imperative around that. This is obviously going from a business process product first. We've got another one where we've got where we go from an actual problem, so almost like a diagnostic approach, and it's very, very similar. If we would say, that we were told that the orders were late 50% of the time, but we don't know why, what we would do is we build a pyramid exactly the same way, but we do it from the bottom up this time. We say, like, let's start at the bottom, look at actually what's happening, and that's the information level. So abandonment, cart abandonment rates, returned orders, late orders, look at the correlations between those, look at the shipping and the dispatch correlations around that, and say, oh, actually, we found out your orders are being late. That's why this is happening. That's why you're losing all these orders, because they've been late dispatched. And then what we do is we will build a an inventory optimization model. Again, same with, it'd be a very similar pyramid. And then we're using cost and stock levels and dispatch service level agreements around that, and then actually give you the warehouse, the new warehouse plan, and then a bunch of metrics to actually measure that to make sure it's actually optimized going forward, because obviously these things change, and the warehouses obviously would get the optimization models will change over time, because obviously you get new stock, different types of products, and that different types of customers and that type of stuff. So again, we can go from business process, or we can go from actually diagnostic, which is really, really interesting. So that's the summary. So that's the end of the presentation. So the summary is capture value and prioritize at the business use case level. So this is really, really important. So start the use case, have a valuation framework to be able to do that, work with the business to be able to prioritize. And yeah, like I said, don't start with the data necessarily. Use business AI and product data expertise. So basically, what we haven't talked a lot about the operating model of this, and that's going to be on a separate session. So it's really, really important when you're doing this kind of work, you bring in quite a lot of people. It's a multidisciplinary team. It's not just one person. It's people who understand AI. We've got these data product specialists, which are business-facing so analytics people. But the idea is that you can bring the people together you need to actually be able to solve these problems fundamentally. What you don't want is to throw and catch between different parts of the organization, which will take time and take friction. And again, this kind of has quite an operating model implication, but it's certainly, if you can get it right, it works really well. And we call this the combined data product team. It could be virtual, it could be org chart related, but it's really, really important that's there. And have the process to be able to continuously ideate, industrialize, prototype, this sort of stuff. And that's really, really important to be able to have that process to be able to actually adapt to the business as the business changes, especially in this market and this kind of highly volatile market. It's so important to orientate your business to be able to actually do this. And this is really what AI native in my world actually is. And it's also quite controversially, I think, the essence of data product management. Again, it's using AI products, but it's the same process. So business first, value first, fast delivery, iteration, and adapting. I think this is what data product management really should be all about in the analytics and data and AI space. Questions?
I was going to just say thank you, John, for a really excellent presentation and covering it so well. I think while we wait for any questions, and if anybody can send them in, we'll bring them up and ask them. What we learned, I think you took us through sort of the continuous opportunity identification, which we're using the data product pyramid process and using the sort of the AI toolkit. I love the sort of business focused AI expert approach, but the last part we touched on a bit was the sort of needing a sort of robust AI and data infrastructure. Is there anything we sort of takeaways on there that we need to think about to deliver what you've taken us through here, John?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stuart. So I think this is something that, yeah, I hear a lot. I was at a product meetup last night, and him, the data product managers, saying how slowly things take to go through the infrastructure. Obviously, there's organizational aspects of that. There's operating model aspects and team aspects around that. But something that I've done a lot with in UX and in prototyping and on the software side is having that ability to prototype quickly and then productionize is really, really important to be able to do. And the thing about AI, and machine learning generally, you're experimenting, so things are going to fail. You want to be able to prototype stuff. You want to be able to put it in front of the business, and you need infrastructure to be able to do that. And and actually building that infrastructure is actually quite complex. There's a lot of tooling. There's a lot of pieces that need to be brought together. You need kind of the right operating model, the process flows to actually be able to do that. And I think this is something that really, to actually deliver this stuff is going to be really important. There's some new tools coming out. Obviously, the market's still moving on that, but this is a piece that is really, really important, because ultimately, data and analytics infrastructure is all about delivering business value. It should be about delivering business value, and that's in order to be able to implement these sort of processes on time, and the infrastructure needs to be there to do it. And that's obviously something we've been working on. We'll be doing an announcement of that at some later date.
Yes, interesting times ahead. We've got a question from Anna, which I'm going to put up on the screen here.
I'll stop showing my screen, shall I?
Really interesting. I'm surprised by the speed that you're saying you're able to achieve this. And in my experience, the lack of documentation and data quality problems often create a lot of friction that slows this down. How are you able to avoid these pitfalls?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anna. Thank you for that. So the way we do it is we actually, when we talk about the data product approach, is all data quality and those kind of things are all part of that kind of building the data product definition and the data product itself. So imagine you're building let's take something simple as a metric. You're doing sales forecasts for a sales team. What we would do is assemble a small team together, data product specialist, an architect, a data engineer, potentially a data scientist and a business person, and we go and actually look at if this sales metric didn't exist, we'd go and talk to the business teams. We'd actually then define the logic, get them agreed by the business, get all the data quality rules associated with that, and discover all the aspects around kind of data that's required for that particular data product. It's all done as part of that. And once we've done that, and this comes back to the infrastructure question, what you really want to do is when you deliver that, you want to then publish that into an infrastructure where people can search it and kind of understand what's happening. Kind of, all the data quality rules are associated with the model, they're associated with that delivery, and with that business context, and that's super important. Again, it's kind of a little bit of a shift in the change of kind of how you do this, and also that if you take the data product approach, like the data mesh type thing, it's a microservice. Everyone's actually hitting that sales metric itself, so you're not trying to duplicate it as well. So understanding the data quality for that particular metric is probably the most important. What tends to happen is that tends to be off to the side. I'm doing a data ingestion piece and I've got data quality, and it's done by another team, and all the knowledge is lost. But for what we try and do is actually try and package that all up as part of the whole business context, really. But you're right, there still have the investigation. The data is not documented. You still need to go and find that. But what we try and do is package that documentation with the data product, so we actually understand it. So I can go into the catalog. We don't make all the data product catalog. It has all that stuff in it. So we even like conversations around with people around what's this attribute mean? Oh, it means this, this, and this. We can get that's all searchable and findable. It's part of the data product definition inside the catalog as well. So there's a bit of process, there's a bit of encapsulation, and there's a bit of technology to be able to do that.
Well, I'm going to ask another question here, which is I do love the metaphor of using AI treasure hunting, but that makes me wonder if there's like a treasure map, and and whether we talked about the AI toolkit, and I really like the idea of the business problems, the business solutions, how do you map, we talked about putting the right AI tool with the right business solution. How do you avoid sort of boiling the ocean, sorry, of going through every possible combination of tools till you find them, or the other end of the scale, okay, well, I've got an LLM hammer, therefore, I'll use that for everything. How do you find the right tool set for the right business problem?
So I'd love to say there's a magic kind of formula for that, but it's really, you dropped me off. I'd love to say there's a magic formula for that, but really that's a bit of art and science around the experience. So fundamentally, this is also why you go to the use case first, because you try and understand the business problem first, and then the class of the problem. And that really is where the expertise comes in fundamentally. So you've done this a lot of times when you've come into a business problem and someone said it's this class of problem, you say actually it's not that class of problem, it's this type of problem. So really the expertise comes in and helps that. The toolkit is around knowing what type of problems work for what type of business solution. And also, if you don't know, then there's some experimentation saying, actually, we've got a risk here. We think there's 3 or 4 ways we could do this. Let's do a bit of a cost benefit analysis on each of them, and risk analysis, and then go, we'll do these two, a bit of a POC around those, or a pilot proof of value really around those pieces. But yeah, there is, like I said, it's not like we're throwing every model at every problem. It's coming with that the prior knowledge around is super important.
Thanks for that, John. We don't have any other questions, so I've got one that's another one I thought of that's in case anybody's got any coming in, please feel free to submit some, which is sort of contextual, really, in that each one of these cases is perhaps one in isolation. I would say, what's your view on how this approach fits in with the composable enterprise? Because I'd sort of posit that it sounds like it enables anyone to sort of create a dynamic, interconnected network of AI data products that you can evolve at the speed of your business, to coin a phrase.
Yes, no, absolutely. This is front and center of and core as part of that. And again, what the encapsulation I just talked about a minute ago is really important for that. If it's all in one kind of data warehouse or data lake and stuff, it's very hard to actually do that, because part of this process is being able to adapt to what's happening with the business. As the business changes, you want to be able to change these products. You want to be able to move them around. You want to be able to, that metric we measured for the sales forecast might change because the regulation comes in. Then we need to report differently. So we need to change a new metric in there to be able to actually start reporting on the new ways of doing stuff. And that's going to be really hard if you've buried your metrics somewhere in the middle of a data warehouse or lake or BI tool or something like that, especially if you want to say, well, what's our total sales over the last 2 years? And you want to break in the middle, that's half on the old rules and half on the new rules. That's really, really hard to do. So being able to have these small composable units, these data products, we call them, to be able to do that is super important, and the pyramid itself is the composability of it. They all, there's dependencies around that. So the top one depends on the ones next underneath it, and so on and so on. And the pyramids will change and shift as they go. So that's a really great question.
Well, we don't have any more questions, so I think that could be the end of our live stream. So I'm going to say thank you very much, John. That was super interesting and detailed as ever. Really informative, I thought. And it's going to be up straight after this live. We'll post it on YouTube, and as per before, we'll cut up and chunk any sections. If anybody wants to follow up in person with any questions, we're very happy to take those and discuss any further. And I'll just hand over to John to close out.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Stuart. Well, thank you for everyone who's joined, and hopefully that was informative. It's it's something very close to our heart, something we do on a day-to-day basis with lots of organizations. So, if you, like Stuart said, if you want to reach out and understand more, or you want to, engage us, please reach out and DM us on LinkedIn or, Dataception website. So thank you very much for joining in, and, have a great day, morning, night, or wherever you're dialing in from.